All right, finding equation given roots of a quadratic. Now remember the general form of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Divide everything by a so that the coefficient of x squared is going to be 1. That will be x squared plus b over ax plus c over a, that is going to be equal to 0. Now imagine you are solving, okay, imagine you are solving a quadratic. You found that its roots were x is equal to alpha or x is equal to beta. So what were the roots of this equation? So take the alpha the other side, becomes x minus alpha. Take the beta the other side, becomes x minus beta, and that is going to be equal to 0. If you do the cross multiplication, you're going to get x squared minus alpha x minus beta x plus alpha beta is equal to 0. So this will be x squared. I'll factorize out a negative. Okay, so that will be negative uh, alpha. It becomes plus beta. Since x is also common, I'm also factorizing it, but the x I'm going to put it this side, and then plus alpha beta, that will be equal to 0. So this is where the thing comes from. The b over a should be equal to this part. The c over a should be equal to alpha beta, roots of a quadratic. Now this thing we're able to see here is what gives us the equation. So from here we can determine that alpha plus beta is equal to negative c over a. We just compare like this. B over a should be equal to negative alpha beta, but this negative we just attach it to this one. Okay, actually this is negative b over a. I don't know why I write c there. Negative b over a, and then the c over a is going to be equal to alpha beta. When you want to find the equation of a quadratic, the equation of a quadratic is going to be given by x squared minus, you can see alpha and beta were the two roots. What are we doing? We're adding them. So minus sum of the roots, you put an x, and then plus a product of the roots, and that is going to be equal to 0. So this is the equation that you need to know, okay, when you've been given roots of a quadratic and they've asked you to find the equation. A very simple example, since we know now the equation. Let's say we've been given that the roots of a equation, okay, let's say an equation has roots, can I say 6 and 4. Find the quadratic equation. This is the quadratic equation that has got this equation. Now I want to find it. Remember the formula, x squared minus sum x and then plus product is equal to 0. So this will be x squared minus sum. The sum, we have got 6 plus 4, which is 10x, plus product 6 times 4, which is 24, is equal to 0. So this equation that you're able to see here, if you solve it, is going to give you these two roots, 6 and 4. Okay, so basically that is how you get to find the sum. I mean, that's how you find an equation given the two roots. Okay, let's consider this one. If alpha and beta are the roots of the quadratic equation, x squared plus 3x minus 2. Now I want to find the equation whose roots, find the equation whose roots are these two which are here. Now, again, this is not supposed to be a plus but and, because these are two different roots. Even this one is supposed to be and, right? If there's a plus, then you're supposed to be given two different forms. Like they'll give you 1 over alpha squared plus 1 over beta squared, that is one root, and they'll give you another root, but these are two different roots. Now the first thing that you always need to find is you need to find from the equation that you've been given, find the product and the sum of roots. So I'm going to find alpha plus beta, which is given by negative b over a. That will be negative b is 3 over a is 1, so that will just be negative 3. And then find alpha times beta, which is given by c over a. C is negative 2, a is 1, so that will just be negative 2. Okay, this is the sum and product of this equation. Now I want to find an equation whose roots are these two. So the first thing that we need to find for question A, we need to find the sum of the two roots that we have. Alright, sum of the two roots. What are the roots that we have? The first one is 1 over alpha squared. Add it to the next root, which is 1 over beta squared, and this will give us alpha squared plus beta squared over alpha beta squared. Now you know the identity that you need to replace where this alpha squared plus beta squared, that is alpha plus beta squared minus 2 alpha beta, and then in the denominator we've got alpha beta squared. Now replace what is alpha plus beta? It's here. Okay, that is a negative 3, but you square that. Minus 2 alpha beta is negative 2 over negative 2 squared. Negative 3 squared 9, that will be plus 4 over 4, which is basically a 13 over 4. This is the sum of the roots. We also need to find the product of the roots. Okay, for the product, the first root we have is 1 over alpha squared. Multiply with the next root that we have, that is 1 over beta squared. That is going to give you 1 times 1 on top, that is 1. Alpha squared times beta squared down, that will be alpha beta squared. Now substitute 1 alpha beta, we see that's a negative 2, but it's squared, so this will give us 1 over 4. This is the product. So we can now go to the formula. X squared minus sum x, okay, plus product is equal to 0. So this becomes x squared minus, what is the sum of the roots? That is 13 over 4. You put an x, okay, plus what's the product of the roots? That is 1 over 4. That is going to be equal to 0. Now you can see that we have got a 4 in the denominator for both equations. So what are we going to do? I'm going to multiply everything by a 4. Okay, so that gives us 4 times x squared to be 4x squared. Then this 4 just cancel with this 4 in the denominator. The same, this 4 cancel this thing which is in the denominator. That will be negative 13x plus 1 is equal to 0. So this is the equation having the roots 1 over alpha squared plus 1 over beta squared if x squared plus 3x minus 2 as the roots alpha plus beta. So that is it for the first one. Any question?
So,
Yeah.
what I find here, now I'm lost. I don't know what we are doing here.
We are finding the equation. We are finding the equation. So again, we have got another one. We want to find the equation whose roots is alpha over beta squared and beta over alpha squared. So we have got two roots. The first root is alpha over beta squared. The next root is beta over alpha squared. Okay? If you know that you've got an equation whose roots is 6 and 3, you can easily find the equation, right? Like you just say it will be x squared minus 6 plus 3, which is 9x, plus you multiply these two, that gives you the equation 18 is equal to 0. Now you know the roots they've given is alpha over beta squared and beta over alpha squared. How can you find the equation? So to find the equation, the first thing is using the equation that you have, you need to find alpha plus beta and alpha times beta using the equation that you have. Now, after you find using the equation that you have, now go to the one that you've been given. Let's find the sum of the two roots that you've been given. The first root is alpha over beta squared. Okay, the next root is beta over alpha squared, so we need to add them. Plus beta over alpha squared. So adding these, cross multiply this times this, merge it as a single fraction, that will be alpha cubed, beta times beta cubed, squared, beta cubed In the denominator also multiply them, that will be alpha beta now with a square. Now you know the identity that you need always to replace when you have alpha cubed plus beta cubed. It is always alpha plus beta and then multiplied by alpha squared minus alpha beta plus beta squared. In the denominator you have got alpha beta squared. I'm going to pair up this alpha squared and this beta squared. That is going to give us alpha plus beta, open brackets, alpha squared plus beta squared minus alpha beta now alone divided by alpha beta squared. You also again know the identity that you need to replace where there's alpha squared plus beta squared. So this will give us alpha plus beta. So where there's alpha squared plus beta squared, we put alpha plus beta with a squared and then minus 2 alpha beta. So just this represents this portion, but remember also have a minus alpha beta. So minus 2 alpha beta minus alpha beta, that will give us minus 3 alpha beta. In the denominator we still have alpha beta squared. So at this point now we can start replacing. Okay, so where there's alpha plus beta, we're going to put negative 3. Where there is alpha plus beta inside, again we're going to put negative 3, but it's squared, minus 3. Where there's alpha beta, we'll put negative 2. In the denominator, alpha beta again, that's negative 2 squared. So this will give us negative 3. Negative 3 squared, that's a 9. 3 times 3 times 2 will be positive 6. And then over 2 squared, that is going to be a 4. Right? 9 plus 6, that is going to be a 10. This is the same thing that I did in the other video. I'm guessing there was a mistake. I found a 4 instead of a negative 3. Okay. So this is going to be negative 3. 9 plus 6, that is, what number are we going to get? A 15, and then divided by a 4. So negative 3 times 15, we have got 3 times 5, that is 5, remainder 1. It is going to be 45 over 4. Okay, so this is going to be the answer. This is going to be the sum. So we have found the sum to be negative 45 over 4. So we also need to find the product of the roots that we have. So product of the two roots is going to be, the first root is alpha over beta squared multiplied by the next root, which is beta over alpha squared. Now if you look at this, 1 alpha will cancel with 1 alpha down here, 1 beta will cancel with 1 beta down. It means on top will just remain with a 1. Down there will be 1 alpha here, there will be 1 beta here, there will be 1 alpha here. So down we're going to remain with a product of alpha and beta, which is alpha beta. So this will give us 1 over alpha beta is negative 2, which we can basically write as so we are writing product is negative 1 over 2. So to write the equation is given by x squared minus sum x plus product is equal to 0. So this will be x squared minus the sum is negative 45 over 4 plus product is negative 1 over 2 is equal to 0. We can go on and simplify this. So be x squared plus, I've forgotten an x, we always attach an x here, 45 over 4 x minus 1 over 2 is equal to 0. So just to make this not being a fraction, I'll look in the geometry, I've got a 4 and a 2. I always get a bigger number, I'll get a 4. 4 times x squared, that would be 4x squared. 4 times 45 over 4, that would be 45x Then 2 can go into 4, that is 2 times 2 times negative 1, that will be 2 is equal to 0. So this is going to be the equation.